Hello and welcome back, Commanders. This is or will likely be the last video for Red Alert 2 before we move on to Renegade. And um, you might notice that we're not starting with the first mission available for the Allies in Yuri's Revenge. This because, people often complain that these videos are either too long or they're not really interested in seeing all the inner workings of maps. And I don't cover all the inner workings because, well, they're pretty complex and they have a lot of stuff going on. But I'm gonna try and show off the co-op missions first. Sadly, I couldn't get a proper run through with AI. And this is for two major reasons. The first being the limitation within the way that it's programmed. I don't know if it's a CNC net thing specifically or a limitation applied by the maps themselves or just the circumstances of how you have to play the maps, but you can't make it so that you're playing against, say, dumber AI. And this becomes important because the AI that you put for yourself when they spawn at a different location, they always spawn at a different location than you, obviously, but they automatically ally everybody on the map. And because this experience, I guess we'll call it, is very similar to skirmish maps, it's very similar to online play. Really, the thing that makes these unique is that you start with a couple extra things from time to time, and the maps are either callbacks to previous maps or they're just built in a way that wouldn't be viable for a regular skirmish activity, a regular like battle mode and capture the flag and whatever. So you end up having a series of maps that, unless you have a second human player, you can't play them because your AI buddy that's supposed to be on your team, who is forced onto your team, by the way. This isn't like everybody starts random or whatever. Um, it really is like the AI does not want to fight, so you're essentially playing a one versus two versus one, or one versus three, but one of them is actually just dumb and doesn't want to do anything. In any case, the the way that the co-op missions work is that they kind of each have their own quirk, and depending on which one they are, you're playing against certain specific things. What I mean by that is, for example, this is the first mission. It is, at least the first one in the drop down menu. It is a co op mission versus Yuri. It's supposed to be the Alliance campaign, they call it. Now, the Alliance co op missions, the map is very obviously the New York map. The one that's used, the first one used in the Allied campaign, but there are some changes. So, notably, where the map cuts off in the single player mode, they've dragged it out so that it includes an ore field. There's a little bit of extra minerals and diamonds and gems, as well as just an expanded top. So it's interesting to see how they're reusing maps, um, so that they're not wasting that much time in building these sorts of things. Now, on the mini map, you can see these giant red blocks, or I shouldn't say giant, but anyways, you see these red squares on the mini map. It's hard to see really, and I can't make the mini map any larger, which sucks. Um, Essentially, the red blocks are where players are supposed to start, and that kind of gives you your position, your opening position, and how everything's going to play out. We can also see that there's some waypoints on the map that the AI is supposed to use, so it gives you an idea as to um, where, if they send units, where they're going to go exactly and how things work. Now, importantly, I think this might be another thing as to why it doesn't necessarily work, is that um, for when you're playing, oops, can I undo? Apparently not. All right. So when you're using AI, it's a little unfortunate because essentially in the Alliance campaign or the Alliance co-op map, um, you can pick whoever you want, and you should. It's not forced, but you should use a unit of a different faction. Or alliance side. So if one person's an American faction or the Allied faction, then the other needs to be the Soviet faction. Now, on top of that, there are some problems with how the game is set up, in the sense that if you don't mark yourself specifically in position one or position two, I suppose, whenever you start the mission, it you're on a black screen. You can hear stuff happen, but because you've never been assigned a position, none of your stuff spawns. This is problematic because it means you can't play. So minor setback if you're playing with a friend, make sure to select your positions. Um, Now, for a lot of these things as well, I won't have as much information as whatever is available for single player stuff. So apologies all around. I really wish I could have gotten this to work, but not the case. Um, so we have a auto mech in the top right. We have some oil derricks. Top left, we have a one of the special labs for secret devices. I think this gives you a Grand Cannon. I forget if it gives you anything else. We had an airport right above the Monkey Burger, or Burger Kong, sorry. And essentially, what happens is you have a Yuri that spawns to the southwest of the World Trade Center, and you have a Yuri that basically takes the waterfront. Now, neither of them do anything special in the sense that they don't. It's not a one builds X unit, the other builds a Y unit, and they kind of use their synergy together to do stuff. They just kind of follow skirmish rules in a way, as far as I've noticed. So apologies if other players may have a different experience. As well, they have some naval yards, so expect boomers at a certain point. And if not, well, I know that they'll have amphibious transports to bring stuff over to waypoint 524, and then that just kind of bugs you from behind. Additionally, and kind of annoyingly, there are units that spawn off from off map and then come over completely from behind. And unlike this location, you don't have buildings to protect you, so they always make it into your base and then they cause havoc, and it's not a fun time. Additionally, I should mention there are three campaigns, or yeah, three campaigns, quote unquote. So you have Allied, Soviet, and Yuri, as well as Alliance. Now, some things to note as well is that a lot of these have a sort of it's not even filler, but like flavor text that explains a little bit of the situation. So, for example, in this mission, the Allies spawn on the left, the Soviets are on the right, and how it works is that the top allied player actually gets starts with an air command, starts with a power plant, and two Harriers will spawn in and land on the command base. Whereas the bottom player has a hospital right next to him, and they already start with 6 infantry, which I think is actually more than 6 infantry when you play the game. So I don't know specifically why that's the case. Um, However, uh, it the flavor text basically explains that one player has the control or should have control of air, where the other player has control of the ground. And it's interesting because you, if you have people who may have a preference for one versus the other, it kind of brings that to light. It's also interesting because we will see a pseudo development of this mentality later on as we progress in the series. Um, so we get some oil derricks in the near the Allied bases. Two sentry guards to block them. There's a tech outpost as well, and it's a pretty straightforward map altogether, but nonetheless interesting. And sadly, uh, it can be fun to play, but because you don't have because I don't have the availability to play it without AI, kind of don't get to enjoy it as much. I'm not quite sure why this cube is here. I've never seen that one before. Um, so this one is an LA mission. One of the allied players starts in the bottom left. The other starts in the bottom right. One is essentially tasked with controlling the airport, and by controlling the airport or otherwise the outpost, the actual tech airport building is made available to them. Um, Paratroopers. Other thing to keep in mind is that these can also be very interesting maps to play in terms of synergy with both your ally and what's available to you. So what I mean by that is, for example, the base American Allied faction has on its own the ability to call in airborne. Now, airborne are basically the same as paratroopers. I think the only difference might be in how many units one spawns versus the other, because one is a faction bonus, whereas the other is a tech outpost bonus. And I think they wanted to make the tech outpost bonus less powerful than the faction, because otherwise, why pick the faction? Um, but essentially, what this means is that if you play as the Americans, you have the outpost is considered a different ability to the airborne. That's why both are labeled separately as well. So essentially, you can pair drop two groups of units. I think it's something between 12 and 16 GIs. So you can put 12 or 16 GIs anywhere, which is very useful because, well, there's a lot of buildings. So if there's anywhere that's not covered by the enemy, you can drop some units in, capture some buildings, and immediately pressure or defend an area. Conversely, the right player, there's mention of an oil derrick or to protect oil derricks, and we can see one. Um, there's two in the corner, but there's oil derricks that seem to be strewn around in other locations as well. I remember seeing one on the left, top left over here. The single player mission should have had one uh, in the meantime, but it does not look to be there anymore. Now, apparently, Sly Stallone is still in this mission, but I doubt I'm pretty sure this is just a voice line. I don't think they would give you control of that during even during a co-op mission. It seems like it's a little too unique for the game, in my opinion. Additionally, we can see that you're fighting Yuri. It's a pretty comprehensive base for the back Yuri player. A lot of power plants, some that can't be positioned. So I assume the AI just skips them if they can't build them. Um, but otherwise, you kind of got to be prepared to fight Yuri, which is a little annoying. And speaking of synergy as well, the other thing to keep in mind is that um, because you're both playing as allied, you can have, say, one unit or one guy focuses on, say, tank destroyers, whereas the other one has snipers, as the British and Germans. And in that way, you can at least cover both your anti tank and anti infantry options. And considering the British sniper outranges the virus, and the tank destroyer is just a really good anti vehicle unit, you can see how well that would work in conjunction. Allied mission, co-op Allied mission 3. I believe both units or both Allied players start in the middle, and they're basically just flanked by the AI. Now, while there's some interesting things that they try to do in the sense of positioning and um, mixing up factions together so that you can kind of get some extra bonuses, the the problem that keeps creeping up for me is that there's no major triggers, there's no major um, events that can play out during these missions. And I don't know if it's because they couldn't get them to work, or if it's more just a limitation on, well, if you gift units, do you have to gift units to both players? And if you don't, how does that affect it, or how does it affect it, or is it possible that um, say the AI player could trigger this sort of thing, and so on and so forth. So um, we have the Soviet missions, um, some prison tanks, some power plants. Soviets start with naval units already. Allies have some as well. Oh, this is the Seattle mission. Okay. And we have the Microsoft Bing, or Massive Soft, sorry. Massive Soft campus. Another mission that wasn't really explored. Well, we'll get to see the difference between this one and the actual single player one. Um, but yeah, interesting to see that both the bases start, which I can only assume is for the Allies because it wouldn't make sense otherwise. So the Allied, the AI enemy Allied are going to be at the bottom. Interesting to see that there's outposts out here. And that includes such things as a barracks and a tech center. I'm very curious to see if a tech center would provide you with a spy, which then you could capture the barracks, open up a hole in the wall. This guy's just all you have to do is build a spy really, and then get him into the battle lab and see how that goes. But yeah, otherwise nothing. Doesn't seem like there's anything too crazy. And just really an interesting way to build these missions, especially with Grand Cannons. It's always nice to see the AI getting Grand Cannons just to kind of force the player into having to get around that themselves. Now, this is certainly an interesting mission. One starts in a defensive position, the other one with a lot of oil derricks. That's a lot of money to continuously pump into someone's economy. And then some Yuri's buildings up in the top left. I can only imagine, just with how things are positioned, that the human players are on the bottom side of the map. But it's making me a little wary considering there's nothing for the top right. So it could be a left versus right thing, which would probably make more sense considering, well, one, you give the AI a lot of money, so they don't have to worry necessarily about being trapped. The small ore fields here, even though they do regenerate, it's not going to be all that much. Um, and this actually reminds me of the of problems I had with some of the really early Red Alert missions, or even the original Command and Conquer missions, which is that some maps just don't have a lot of money on them, so you end up having money shortages. Last mission for the Soviets, we got two very close positions. One has two nuclear reactors. The other seems to have two siege choppers. Yeah. And this is probably going to be a human start up top, and both AI start at the bottom. You can also see kind of how the AI is has gimmies given to them in the sense that because the AI isn't always structured to repair bridges, like I don't think they realized to do that on as part of an independent strategy, or maybe that's just like a co-op thing or something. So they don't repair bridges continuously. So they'd rather they build these little waterways as a get around, just so that the AI isn't stuck literally. Because the AI isn't also um, given a strategy in the sense that if an AI is the Soviets or if they're Yuri or the Allies, they never prioritize one form of attack versus another. In the sense that if if you were the AI and you had 18 air commands, you would use them for sure, but you wouldn't use the problem is you wouldn't use them in a way that is exclusive. You would throw in a lot of initiates, a lot of tanks, and you would try to supplement this, even though you should probably just, like, especially in a co-op mission setting, you would just use, you know, air units. So Yuri's missions, we've obviously seen this map quite a bit. Interesting that they substitute one of the monuments for a tech center, and they then shove that monument to another part of the map. I guess just so that they can say that it's in there. Um, there are apparently some baseball players for some reason. They're just there, but this is likely to be either. That's not a lot of resources as well. Like I know the map or the editor has a nice feature that says how much money there is on map, but you know, I don't know, not necessarily seeing it. In any case, nothing, I guess, too much to say really about that map, especially since, uh, so as mentioned before, with this specific design on this specific map, there's no water access. Like, yes, there's water access in that, you know, you could put a naval yard, you can put a naval yard wherever, and then build some boomers, but you can't go further than here. And you also can't do anything like, for example, amphibious transports. It's nice to have this field here. It's money at least, and there are gems, but neither of these fields are regenerating. Like all the resources on this portion of the map are finite. And while there's a tech center, again, like tech center is nice and all, but you still can't really do anything. So I don't know. Another one of those design decisions that I don't quite I don't appreciate for sure. I just think it's problematic. Some interesting the Mayan pyramid towers, which I'm very curious to see if they work. They probably do, considering they start with a nuclear reactor as well. Kind of crazy to think about. It's probably the most interesting thing that has been seen in these missions. Yeah. So a lot of tech buildings. At least this one has a nice mix of ground and air, and you have the option to like if you blow the bridge here, you know, AI is basically forced, well, other than this other bridge, but you blow up both bridges, and actually you could blow the third as well. So if you're on top of your game, you can essentially block this one AI from getting out, and then go from there. And lastly, the final Yuri co-op campaign or co-op mission map, which is essentially looking to be like an extended. Um, oh yeah. I've seen this one. London, I think it is. So yeah, it's London. So get the palace, and in one of the maps we had access to this area, and then it warped around or wrapped around, I should say, to one of Yuri's bases. And the same appears to apply here. Doesn't seem to be any any pre-positioned stuff other than front, which I still don't know what the heck that cube is for, but it might imply something to do with AI. Some tech outposts, or more specifically, oil derricks, mechanic, the two oil derricks from before, airport, which we see in the Liberation mission, tech center, which interesting, I suppose. But yeah, that's the co-op missions. Sadly, not much to really say, just because of how they're built and so on. So we'll just jump into the Yuri's Revenge stuff and see how this goes. So for Yuri's Revenge, Allied missions, um, or at least these should be the Allied missions. So we can see some very clever trickery with how they limit what is available on the map. So having all these power plants to ensure that you can actually do stuff, because you don't have power here. It probably there's also yeah. So it allows for stuff to come online at a certain point. Same thing with why you have a construction yard and the nuclear reactor, because eventually one of these things will be sold and replaced, or otherwise changed so that it's not an active thing, so it can't technically be used. And then there seems to be some hints, yeah, revealing stuff, basic reveal stuff, revealing. Otherwise, pretty straightforward for an allied map. The whole going back in time though is the real appeal to it. So I'm not too surprised that there's not much else other than that. Hollywood. Uh, you start with Westwood, or Westwood Backup, they call it, and then you got Sly Stallone. Find a Dino. Interesting that they would just call it that. Oh, right, because it just roars and that's it. Um, so Yuri's stuff on the right. I don't know when this ever comes into play, so that's probably just some freebie bioreactors, which is annoying, especially since they appear to be full. So I don't know if that's a um, an option when placing them and building them. Probably is, likely is, anyways. Um, just to cut down on having to spawn units and then whatever. Grinders in certain buildings. The very vast and open top portion of the map. Mini base on the top left. Interesting that some of these units do not appear to, like, I would kind of expect a a trigger or some sort of cell that would show up and say you can't do that, or well, not say that you can't do that, but you know what I mean. Something that would trigger because you got close enough. But apparently, it's just as soon as you get in range, Arnie becomes yours, and you get to go crazy with him. Same thing on this side. Like, it seems that the unit just might be with, like, quote unquote in the grinder, and then once you blow it up, he gets revealed and does stuff. LAX, not a lot of protection, free paratroopers, and so on. Also, gotta make sure I don't skip any. I almost skipped a mission last time. All right, the one with massive soft, a lot of dead space, which kind of annoying. An air command you can't use. Oh, it's probably for the free radar. That's what it is. It's also why you have radar, and if you when the nuke comes down and blows it up, you lose it. Interesting way to do storytelling that way. A lot of units for Yuri's side of things, but it's also why you kind of have to take things very slowly. It's interesting that the power plants they don't actually show up. They don't have a model that is readily displayed. Interesting that that would be the case. Otherwise, I mean, you can kind of cheese this mission. Um, as long as you got all the power, you're just kind of powerless to do anything. You can kind of just break in and destroy his nuclear silo. It's fine. Especially considering if you use your power, your weather control device early enough, you can knock out all this power, and then he's immediately incapable of doing anything. Or if you blow up either the barracks or the war factory, they can't do anything. And this is one of the very few missions where, even on the outside portion, there's no construction yard anywhere. There's no hidden shenanigans. So it's not just a matter of the AI doesn't have money or anything. It's literally the AI cannot replace something. So if you can destroy either building first, that becomes immensely powerful. Probably my most disliked map of the game. We can see that there's a very long series of waypoints, which I don't even know why you would really bother. Just to explain that Tanya's crossed? Sure, I guess. Hint from the game that you should use Tanya to swim, which honestly, like, if you're playing Yuri's Revenge before playing the original campaign, I don't know what to really say to you. I'm not quite sure why you get a warning so close because, I mean, you're basically in range of Gatling turrets, anyways. This is a little frustrating to see all these triggers here. In place, in place. Bonus trigger. And watch it. I'm going to have to look for that now. Somehow I feel like that's just going to be either crates or, some dumb line of like, oh, I, water. Is it a mirage or something? Another map I didn't like all that much. A lot of boomers you have to deal with right off the bat, and just not a lot of resources available to you. There wasn't too much special about this map either, which I think was kind of annoying. Like you get some off-map help. They destroy essentially both naval yards, so you don't have to worry about it anymore. But you kind of lose agency by it that being the case, and then you have a grind through a massive city um, before getting to an area that is absolutely loaded for the AI player. Three separate ore fields, both or all three of them having an extractor, so that you basically have infinite money. Another ore field that's out of the way. Yeah, it's yeah, unfortunate, I guess. Mission 6, defending the president and premier. Interesting mission. Having to defend. We can see the blue line that delineates where the original play area is. Um, Kind of interesting that it cuts off here. I kind of wonder if you got into this building, would you get shot by the Gatling turrets, or um, are they marked as sleep up until a certain point? Yeah. Some For some reason I keep thinking maybe there should have been like an extra tech building or something, or I don't know. Like maybe like a Grand Cannon that maybe like on the bridge or something. I don't know. Kind of wonder about it. And lastly, the final Allied mission in the Yuri's Revenge campaign. We started this as the Soviets. You're on an island, and then by the time you construct certain things, you have the Allies show up on the bottom, and then it's essentially a huh. Okay. So, like I was saying, you get on this portion, and that really is what activates the large Yuri force to do a bunch of stuff. Now, one of these construction yards. So there are three Yuris in this game. So Yuri 2 is the top one. Yuri 1 is the bottom one, and we have a third Yuri over here. Now, third Yuri seems to only be available if a engineer captures the area or captures that specific um, oil derrick, or I should say oil derricks, uh, plural, but point remains. So it seems that as soon as they captured the oil derricks, we already saw that they built some Gatling turrets, which were rather annoying. Um, but without the oil derricks, because they were exploded by the AI, it then no longer has the ability to build anywhere, and so it can't. So a very interesting way to have that play, I suppose. A very tight knit base, hard to would be kind of annoying to have to go through. Although if you have Grand Cannons and like prism tanks, that shouldn't be that much of an issue. A lot of boomers. What is that? Five boomers? Six? Six? They don't have a naval yard, which is interesting, I suppose. A lot of waypoints on the outside of the map, so kind of curious if that would mean that would be um, naval forces that might spawn from off map, but can't tell. And the final series of maps. Ah, okay. That's already very interesting. So, the Soviet side of things, you start with your forces on the top left, also explains that. So, you start with your forces on top left, they do whatever. You blow up a bunch of stuff after the Allies try to do things and basically run away. Um, you get some audio that helps you out to tell you not to attack Yuri, which is probably just to say like Yuri is too highly defended, you probably don't want to go there, which makes sense. You get units that land on the beach, then you make your way inland. Soviet base gain, blah 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 blah. The Allied base with the time machine, so you go into the yeah, you go there, and then essentially it warps you to an entirely different place on the map that already has units there. So it's basically teleporting units from this corner to this corner. And oh man, is that the case? Uh, hmm. So I'm kind of curious if it only teleports units within a certain radius, but I'm sure that hasn't been the case before, so I don't know. And then we have our. Oh, she's not on the map. She just spawns. She's whatever that icon is. That's a little sad. Rexy starts on our map. Eventually, we'll get teleported and cause chaos. Shoutouts continue to go out to Rexy for saving the free world um, from Yuri's grasp. Another mission that yeah, we didn't really have to do much. I don't think there's anything different. The ally player actually discovers this and uses it, which is interesting. Um, is there anything on the outside? Oh, hey, this what is that? The crate. Yeah, crate still exists, which is kind of funny. Tech outpost is still around, but yeah, I mean, we cheese this one, so not much to really say. No real like extra triggers or anything either, so whatever. So we mission 3, we have to basically rescue the allies so that we can go destroy Yuri. The free ore refinery, which would have been kind of nice to discover, admittedly. Oh, this is also the thing I was mentioning about the commando and the sniper. We can see a sniper is here, so it's actually really well hidden. Um, so if you approach the bridge, you're told there's a sniper. If you get halfway across the bridge, the seal blows it up. And there's also a sniper warning on the top of the bridge, implying that you would somehow go around down here into this area, not only trigger the seal, but also trigger the sniper, which seems weird. Interesting that you're also given a bunch of edge cases, so you can't use your amphibious transport to get around this to go underneath. You still trigger the warning for the sniper, and you still trigger the bridge destruction if you're not careful. Map expands after you capture or you free the base. I don't know if there's much else. Bridges being destroyed. Warning Yuri annoyed. I almost want to know what that is. Oh, right. You just, yeah. You shouldn't waste your time attacking me, Commander. Blah, 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 blah. I suppose amphibious transport to the bottom, to the underside, isn't necessarily bad. You just don't have backup. So the problem, well, you could have backup, but you need you need more amphibious transports, which is annoying to have to deal with because they're slow and vulnerable. And I mean, have you have a ground way to attack, so why not just use the ground way? Ah, yes, this is gonna be a simple mission. Spawn off map, go here, build stuff. Bunch of brutes around. Premier Romanov is in this building. He'll always be in that building. See, there are tags that says it's over, so I wonder if maybe they're just not done properly. And what happens is that normally the game should be over, or the mission should be over if Romanov gets into this area, but because the trigger doesn't work, maybe it's not the case. Can't understand why there'd be waypoints that say hi. That is someone who is probably frustrated by this map as much as I was. Bunch of stuff that Not quite sure why that is there, but oh well. Oh, right. Romanov goes into this area. That's why. So the It's Over is for Romanov, but Romanov gets transported into the prison. Or, yeah. Okay, that makes more sense. So it's not Broken Triggers. All right, that's hell of a map. Oh, look, they drew a heart. I'm gonna assume that's a heart forever now. Essentially, you can start under fire immediately from Yuri. I guess at least like you do have access. I don't think this is climbable here. So at least you have access to destroying Yuri's money operations, and they don't really have a way to react to that. I suppose. Essentially, they're going down the long way around. So it's an interesting way to build the map for sure. Where was the other? Was it this spot that was landable? I think it was. Which seems like hell. I don't know why you'd ever want to establish a base here. We can see all the friggin' boomers they have. Look at all these things. And that's not even the ones that are like patrolling around. Those ones just aren't on the map already. And then Zofia is telling you this is yeah likely just Zofia telling you like, hey, there's something weird with this building or whatever. But yeah, power move is definitely to come down to the bottom right of the map. That's probably the easiest way. You have access to three oil derricks. The ore field isn't exactly the best, so you're kind of trading short-term gains for long-term gains. Whereas if you land up here, two extractors is nice. You only get two oil derricks instead, but you are super close to not only Yuri's one of his smaller little outposts, but also his own money making operation. Moon mission. I mean, yeah, not much. I don't think this is gonna have much to add. Kill surprise, start surprise. Okay. Little outpost on the left. Blow this up for some money. That's about it, really. There's some random tags out here. Oh, right. This probably just shows you like, oh, look, you're on the moon, and then it transports your view or whatever. Nothing from this outpost. It's a little annoying. Someone mentioned that these two outposts are inverted, in that one has one defensive structure, namely the turret here, the Gatling turret, but on this side there's only one mind controlled device. I like the observation, so thanks. For, I forget what your name is, so my apologies. Um, and then there's just this annoying base and set of uh, rules to apply to. Having to destroy everything in this map is probably the more annoying part. I don't think there's something that tells me that Yuri would not be able to subsist on the moon, or at least his forces wouldn't be able to without a cloning facility, without a construction yard, and uh, the means to build stuff like a barracks or a war factory. And finally, the last mission that we're going to look at, which looks very different from how it plays out. You start in the middle. You got options for left or right and left over here. Very interested as to why they have graveyards and all that stuff there, but very interesting to see this. Not looking at the map, it's a very interesting map because of just how everything works in the sense that um, there's so much for the AI to throw at you and um, essentially do that it's cool that way. But when you look at it and it's like lit, like it's super bright and everybody uses yellow, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of just strange to look at. Um, Disappointing that the only thing you really need to do is destroy this building. Otherwise, trans fortress. So hey, trans rights. Um, but yeah, it's kind of disappointing that this mission only requires you to destroy this building and not maybe say like you have to free the two sides first before you can do anything. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being too nitpicky at that point, considering comments from for prior missions. But still, um, I kind of would have expected a little bit more, like a few more triggers. Instead, it's just apparently if you cross certain areas or get too close, then it makes it so that the Allied and Soviet player hates you. Probably just makes them more aggressive. But yeah, so thanks for watching. If you didn't watch this video, well, thanks for your patronage, anyways. I'll be back with the next game in the series. Hopefully, it's not going to give me too many problems. There are a few issues with regards to resolution and whatnot because I think the menu system plays at a different resolution than the game itself. Regardless, going to try and make it work. Hopefully, it does. So I'll see each and every one of you in Command and Conquer Renegade. And for those of you who participate in the forums, thank you as well. I always appreciate the comments and mentions, any corrections I get, mostly you guys. So thank you very much for that. And there will be a poll to try and determine what we will be playing after Renegade. So just as a little teaser, there will be a couple of mods. It's mostly going to be mods, and if people aren't interested in mods or the sequel, quote unquote, to Renegade. Um, I think it's called Renegade X. I don't know if it's. I don't know any details about it, so please don't spoil it for me. But it'll either be Renegade X, a couple of different mods, either for Red Alert 2 or Tiberian Sun. And if people aren't interested in the mods, which won't be as in depth as any of the main game stuff, um, if nobody's interested in those things, we'll just move on with the next game, which I believe should be Command and Conquer Generals. So, as always, thank you very much, and I will see you all next time.